the double alienated guys, became the Hamburg plotters in the dorms and in the apartments. This is where they used to chant jihadi songs at the Naval Carnero River and have picnics with one another and play soccer. And then what happens is, this guy Zuhair, I have a wonderful picture of him. He's a male strip dancer. He's in jail with these losers, the Spanish guys, the dynamite guys, right? And he's got a police handler named Victor. And Victor says, hey, Rafa, go back up to northern Asturias and try to get a market for this dynamite so we can get these guys again. Well, Zuhair has a friend, Aglif, known as the Rabbit, who's hooked up with these drug guys from this northern Moroccan barrio. This guy, he's about this tall. He's about 4'10". He's the kind of guy, as his friends say, he looks you in the eye. He tells you he's going to kill you. No matter how big you are, you shit in your pants. He's just got out of prison for murder. These guys have been chanting about jihad for 2.5 years. Do nothing. We know that because the substitute imam at the mosque was a police informant, so we have almost daily reports of what they were doing. Jamal comes back on June 29, 2003. One of his friends, the Ulad Akshas, link him to Serhani. Where are you, Serhani? There you are. Who is a substitute preacher at the Alonso Cano Mosque in central Madrid. Jamal is an out-of-control guy. He's an impulsive guy. Okay? He goes out and kills people. He runs drug rings. But he comes out thoroughly radicalized. He wants to kill Jews in Palestine. That's his big thing. When they ask him to belong to a Sufi organization in prison called Justice and Charity, which is against the king and quite religious, he says, no, I want something violent. He comes out, he meets up with Serhani, they bind like this. His wife Rosa tells us that he came home, he kissed her, they walked in the park, but within a month she didn't see him anymore. She's a Christian woman that he met when she was 14 years old. He's with Serhani all the time, and what happens is Serhani and his boys start hooking up with Ahmidan and his drug buddies from Tetuan. And this is where Ahmidan used to traffic drugs in the Lavapiés neighborhood in the Plaza de Cabasteros. This is where they all used to meet at the Alhambra restaurant and have sandwiches. And they bond. And the interesting thing is, most of the guys fall out from the religious group. Half of the guys fall out from the drug group because they don't want to be religious. And these guys, they don't want to do anything. They just want to talk. So what happens is you get a bonding, almost accidental, of these guys. And it's Zuhair, this male strip dancer, who just got 10 years in prison yesterday. He is the one who figures out to exchange dynamite for hashish and make bombs. Now, the interesting thing is that 4 of the 7 Madrid bombers who blew themselves up at the end all were Jamal's friends. They were drug runners. They had nothing to do with jihad. Zero. They were drug runners, and they blew themselves up. And the ones who escaped, because they were taking out the garbage when the police was coming, they wound up in Iraq, and they blew themselves up. We went to their neighborhoods where they lived. This is the neighborhood in the Jamal Mezouak barrio of Tetuan, and they all grew up here. And lo and behold, when we found out that the 4 of the 7 guys who blew themselves up in Madrid came from this little neighborhood, we found that there were about a dozen suicide bombers who had just gone to Iraq, 4 of which had been identified by their DNA, sent to the Moroccan authorities by the Americans. So this 2-block area, okay, has sent maybe up to 30 suicide bombers. None of them are religious, to tell you the truth. This is the mosque where many of them prayed, but it's not the mosques. It's the Chicago Cafe. It's the soccer field where they're all soccer buddies. All the guys who went to Iraq to blow themselves up that we have the DNA for, they're all soccer friends. When we asked the police who were trying to figure out in Madrid what was going on, we said, hey, is there a soccer field? Oh, yes, there's a soccer field by the Akshas. We asked the people in the neighborhood, who was playing soccer? Happened to be all the guys that eventually became the plotters. Now, I go into the neighborhoods and I ask these guys, the young guys, who are your heroes? What are your dreams? Okay? Because that's what you got to fight. You've got to fight their heroes. You've got to fight their dreams. And this is the list, about 50 people, 50 young. It's the little kids who talk to me in my broken Arabic. They speak Moroccan Arabic, which I can't understand. I use Levantine. And number 1 is Ronaldinho. He's the Brazilian soccer star for the Barca club. Number 2 is Ito. He's the black Brazilian soccer star. Number 3 is the Terminator. They have no idea that he's related to the present governor of California. And number 4 is Osama bin Laden. I should say this is the Plaza de Salvador Cervos in Ceuta, which is the Spanish enclave just north of the Jama Mezuac, belongs to Spain. There are 2 cafes here, one right there which belongs to the Madrid club, one that belongs to the Barca club. Al Jazeera is on all the time, and the kids sit there and their brothers sit there and they comment on the news. I don't know if any of you watched Al Jazeera. You get 15 minutes of Iraq with people running through the streets with their kids' brains falling out. You get 10 minutes of Palestine, which isn't as bad, but it's pretty gruesome, and you get 1 minute for the rest of the world. And the people watch this, and television is very important. People watch this, and let me tell you, you would want to join the jihad. They say, how can they do that? How can people let these people kill children like this? Okay? We've got to do something. It's a little bit like Jews who say, never again. Never will we allow this to happen again. That's what you've got to combat. All right. Just a very fast sort of conclusion. What is radicalization all about? First of all, we've done, I think, the only empirical studies that show that humiliation has nothing to do with it. Humiliation is negatively correlated with willingness to commit violence. Okay? What does do it is moral outrage. They're doing it to our people. And it only works if that moral outrage resonates with your personal experience. In the United States, there is no possibility. Why? Because Muslims in America buy into the American dream. Their demographic profile is exactly the average. They're underrepresented in prisons, just like Jews are, and they're thoroughly integrated. In Europe, they're 5 to 20 times likely to be poorer. Their representation in the prison population ranges from 60 to 80% of the total prison population. You know how many, by the way, talk about hysteria. We have Congress, and I've testified before many committees, pushing billions of dollars to fight radicalization. Does anybody have any idea how many Muslims have been radicalized in U.S. prisons? Take a wild guess. 2. Exactly. Folsom Prison. You knew this. 1 out of 1 million. That's very low. Very low. And these were 2 losers. One was a son of a Black Panther, and the other guy was a member of an L.A. gang. And they spent most of their time fighting to try to get the L.A. gang guy didn't want to take off his tattoos, and the other guy said, no, to assimilate in the population, you have to take off tattoos. Anyway, they finally got some guys to do this, and they dropped a telephone on the outside, and the FBI put 500 people on this case. 500. They took the entire St. Louis FBI on these 2 losers. Now imagine that. As some guy in the White House told me, it's the golden age for drug traffickers, white-collar crime, and the mob. So what's the wrong thing to do? So the Quadrennial Defense Review of the United States Defense Department minimized U.S. costs in terms of lives and treasure while imposing unsustainable costs on the enemy. Well, jihadis don't respond to utilitarian cost-benefit analyses. They respond to moral values and are more than willing to die for the cause. The more pressure you put on them, the more they're willing to die. We have a couple of articles in the Proceeding of the National Academy of Sciences and in Science magazine in August with some empirical results on the role of these kinds of sacred values in conflict. This is an interview I did with the Emir of Jama'a Islamiyya, who basically tells you why people are willing to sacrifice themselves. We find non-rational thinking. There is no transitivity of preferences in their thinking. And you find weird kinds of things like, would you postpone a martyrdom operation to aid a sick father? Of course we would. Would you postpone a martyrdom operation to save your whole family from certain death, including the father? Of course not. Now, That doesn't make much rational sense, right? But it makes a lot of moral sense. Social welfare is not a solution. These guys get bored and they sit around and are more likely to surf the net and join jihad. Especially in the Middle East, don't attempt to discredit Salafi ideology. It's only going to backfire. And the only people who have actually seen get people away from suicide squads are Salafis. Stop trying to impose freedom and democracy. The values are justice and fairness. Now, they're not incompatible at all, but it is fairness and justice that plays the role in their societies as freedom and democracy does for us. And unless the two can resonate one another, I mean, making an election and having people put up their purple thumb is very much like the old English colonials who used to put wigs on people and throw them in courts in the middle of Africa and say, ah, you have laws.